Yes! Oh my god, it feels so good. Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Ari in the Air. Today we're talking about acro. Acro is the funnest way you can fly. It's fast and it's exciting, it's dangerous. There's all kinds of force, and by learning acro, you can get the most comprehensive understanding of how your glider flies, which can go on to lead you to being really comfortable in all kinds of emergency situations, in turbulence, with collapses, resetting your glider with really like high pressure mandatory situations when you're flying cross country. It's totally awesome. But how do you get started? How do you go from just being a regular pilot to learning how to fly acro? That's what we're talking about today. I'm going to tell you how to go from being a normal pilot to start taking the steps you need to take to become a safe acro pilot, doing all the fun maneuvers. So thanks for being here. Subscribe to the channel and let's get to it. Okay. Like I said, acro is so much fun. I love flying acro. Honestly, it was like the reason that I got into paragliding. The first time I ever saw a video of somebody tumbling, I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna do that. And the beginning of my progression in paragliding was all focused on acro. I learned how to fly on a 20-meter freestyle glider, which is not recommended, but it's how I ended up learning. And my first trips were all focused on acro. I went to Morocco to fly Wagga. I went to Chile to learn my acro, my first helis, my stalls, all that stuff. And I'm not going to tell you to do it in the way that I did it. I now, 5 years later, I'm looking back and I think I have a way that will help you get into it safer and smoother with a clearer vision of what's ahead so that you can take the steps necessary, all right? So the first thing that you have to understand about acro is that acro is more about responsibility and restraint and maturity than it is about courage and maneuvers and being a show-off, right? So a lot of pilots here in America, when they see acro, they think, those goddamn kids, they're trying to kill themselves and stroke their egos up there, and they're gonna get hurt and ruin it for all of us. We should ban acro, right? We should ban acro. Ban it. And in some places here in America, they already have banned acro, which is kind of silly. But if you're gonna get into acro, you gotta do it responsibly. You wanna be conservative. You don't really wanna ruffle all the feathers. You're trying to actually learn how to do these things safely so you don't kill yourself and it becomes a big problem, right? The person who is drawn to acro has a propensity to show off, I think, right? Like, I want to show off. I'm a really good pilot. Sometimes when I'm over launch, I want to just do a misty flip real quick. But you gotta learn to control that urge. You gotta be like, well, how much altitude do I have? What are the conditions? What's my currency? There's a whole myriad things that go into it. So it's important to understand that it's more about restraint, it's more about maturity than it is about courage and showing off and pulling strings, right? With that said, if you want to start learning acro, first you gotta master the basic SIV, right? SIV is done over water with a life jacket and a rescue boat and the supervision of a trained professional. And it's really important that you start that way, because when you haven't done any of that, you really have no idea what your glider can do. You have no idea. I've had students and friends who get on a low B glider. They think it's so slow and dumb, and they think that it's this really studenty glider, and they go out to the lake. One friend, he just pulled a spin and he did maybe 100-degree spin. He went hands up, the glider overshot him, took a huge collapse. He pulled on the brakes, he stalled it, he let it shoot again. He just became this big cascade. I'm like, trust me, it doesn't matter the glider. You have no idea before you start doing these things how spicy every glider is, right? Like, it can get out of control really fast. So you want to start over water with supervision, with a life jacket on, with a rescue boat. When you're going to do SAV, you basically are in a box. And your box decisions are really important as you become an acro pilot, because the box is where you are willing to throw your reserve, essentially. You don't ever do SAV or acro in a place where you're not willing to throw your reserve. You assume that things could go wrong and that you would have to throw, and then if you threw, where would you land? So over the lake, you say, okay, I'm willing to land in the lake today. I'm willing to throw my reserve, so you're willing to do the necessary SIV, right? In the beginning, that looks like collapses, that looks like spins, that looks like spirals, and you're building your way up to doing full stalls, right? Full stalls really are the quintessential foundation of acrobatics. That is your reset, it is the entry into all kinds of maneuvers. Full stall is the building block for pretty much all the maneuvers and makes you understand what the glider does negative and what it does when it resets and how it shoots and all kinds of things, right? So there's this saying in acro that you haven't mastered full stalls until you've done 300 of them. 300, right? So as you go into your SIV, you work your way up to full stalls, and you need to stay in that SIV configuration with the life jacket and the boat over water until you have begun to really get comfortable with the full stalls, right? Some people, that's a dozen full stalls. Some people, that's 40 full stalls. Sometimes that's 80 full stalls, right? Sometimes that's, that's 5 sessions of SIV doing full stalls and full stalls and full stalls. Sometimes people will catch on a little quicker and feel a little bit better. But once you get comfortable with your full stalls in an SIV configuration, with that safety net under you, then you can kind of break off and start training them on your own. And if you're really serious about acro, you're gonna basically be serious about a couple things. One is travel, and the other is towing. Travel and towing, these are the ways that we as acro pilots are able to safely train. The reality is that it's hard to have consistent, reliable altitude over a place that we're willing to throw our reserve. And so we have to travel to the places where the meteorology works just right and we can get free refills, or where there's a tram that goes up a mountain and we can go on the tram and fly over the lake, right? Or we use a tow rig and we tow ourselves up to 3,000 feet over water, preferably to begin with. Let's just talk about travel first. So a professional acro pilot will travel year-round, all these different sites all over the world to have reliable altitude over a box that they're comfortable with. So when a pro is training a brand new trick, or if you are in the beginning of your acro career, you want to go to some place that has water and likely a tram, right? So that is a place like Lake Garda in Italy or Görlitz in Austria. And these places, you get on a tram, you go to the top, you launch off the mountain, you fly out over the water, you do your acro. If you throw your reserve or you cut away, then someone is already in a boat waiting for you and they scoop you up and they charge you, in Garda it's 25 euros, in Görlitz it's 125 euros, but they scoop you up, they put you back on the beach, everybody helps you dry out your shit and repack your reserves, and then you get on the tram and you do it again, right? This is a great way to start learning, feel safe. The people who scoop you out of the water there are really experienced at scooping people out of the water. At Lake Garda, the guy's name is Michael. He's been doing it for years. And they say that if Michael is driving the boat to you, you're going in the water, whether or not you know it at that point. He's been watching people go into the water for decades. So it's really safe. It's an amazing way to connect with the community because you have acro pilots who are training infinities. There are tandem acro pilots. There are people who are really, really experienced who are willing to share with you their knowledge, and you can be a part of the community. It's a really good way to learn and get connected. Then once the pro has trained the new trick and is ready to move on to mastering it, or when you have gotten 50, 80, 100 full stalls over the water and you're ready to start training over dirt, then you can start going to places like Iquique, Chile, or Organa, Spain, where these places actually give you free refills. So you don't take a tram up, you just fly up. You thermal up or you soar up, and then you push out into the box, and you have between 3,000 to 6,000 feet of altitude to do your acro, and then you go back to the hill and you go up, and it's just the most magical Ferris wheel you've ever been on. And it's a really amazing way to train all types of flying, because obviously you use your glider to climb, which trains your thermaling, it trains your climbing, it trains your efficiency, and then you come out and you do acro, and so it's like you pretty much get a really well-rounded training regimen. But those places you train over dirt, right? So if you're training over dirt, you might want to consider your equipment. You definitely want to have 2 reserves at least. I use an Acro 3 harness with 2 reserves. There's also the Acro base system that cuts away your glider and pulls out a skydiving reserve that's steerable and you can tiptoe land, which is really nice, highly recommended. I have all these things in the store. Let me know if you're in need. But the other way to train acro, if you're serious about it, is towing. And there's a number of tow operations all over the country, and it's usually about 40 bucks a tow. So if you imagine that you're gonna go to Italy, you're gonna rent a car, you're gonna go on a tram, you're gonna, it's a number of thousands of dollars. Or you could spend a couple $1,000s on tows and have a similar experience. But it's a really good option to stay local and chip away at your investment in time and money a little bit slower. Obviously traveling is gonna take 3,000 bucks and 3 weeks right up front, where you could do every other weekend all summer long towing, and you could do 3 tows a day, and you could learn that way. But you pretty much have to be serious about traveling. You have to be serious about towing if you really want to go deep into training acro, right? If you want to go to these places, Lake Garda, Iquique, Organa, let me know. I've been there. They're amazing. I can connect you with the local pilots and give you any information that you need. Just put it in the comments below. I answer all the questions in the comments. Also, I'll address the big question that I get most times, which is, do I need an acro glider to learn acro? And the answer is no, you don't need an acro glider to learn acro. You could do 300 full stalls on whatever glider you're flying, and once you're done with your 300, then move on to an acro glider. But the reality is that you want to fly what you can stay high on. If you live in Italy and you can fly at Lake Garda all the time using the tram, then it makes sense to get an 18-meter acro glider when you start getting good. But for me, I fly my acro glider here at Pine, and I have to climb up with it with my heavy harness. So if it's too small, I'll never get to train. So I fly a 21-meter. And sometimes I do acro on my cross-country glider. If it's light and I can get up on my cross-country glider, I'll do full stalls, I'll do deep stalls, I'll do dynamic full stalls, I'll do sats and sat to stall and all kinds of stuff that works well with the cross-country glider, even helicopters. So you can pretty much train with what you got, and you want to stay on what you can stay high on, because what you can stay high on is what you'll get to train on. Okay, so now you've got 100 full stalls, you've got your Acro 3 harness, you're getting more comfortable, you're well on your way. And so now I just want to leave you with 3 more specific ideas to think about that are really important in acro. The first one is your box decisions. Remember, we talked about the box being the place that you're willing to throw your reserve. And when you're thinking about where your box is, you need to consider wind, where it's going to make you drift between the time you throw your reserve and the time you impact the ground. You got to think about your height. How high are you? How long are you going to be drifting in the wind before you hit the ground? Also, what's really important to think about is if you crash there and you get hurt, who will come to get you? How will they get to you? How long will that take? Do they have a tree rescue kit if you're going to land in a tree? Is there a road to come and get you? Right? These are all things that, as an acro pilot, we don't ignore the scary, kind of darker sides of our activity. We actually think about the whole gambit of outcomes, and we want to prepare for the worst possible scenario so that we can hope for the best possible scenario, right? So that means that if you're gonna land in a tree, you wanna make sure you got a tree kit around. If you're gonna impact the ground, you wanna make sure that a truck can drive to you where you're gonna train. Those kind of things are really important to think about when you're training acro. The other thing is altitude awareness. Altitude awareness is probably your biggest responsibility as an acro pilot. How high are you? How much altitude do you actually have? How much altitude does it take to come out of twist? How much altitude can you start burning if your glider starts auto-rotating? All these things, you really want to be super conservative with your altitude decisions because height is what will save your life. If you throw your reserve, it takes surprisingly long for your reserve to open and for your glider to come in and get controlled and for the pendulum to stop in your reserve opening. So you really want to be super conservative and have a very keen eye for your altitude awareness, right? As you learn acro, you're gonna be, even when you're really high off the ground, you're gonna feel like you're not that high. And then as you do more and more acro, you'll get a more realistic sense of how high you actually are, and then how much usable height you actually have, and how big that margin is. So keep your margins really big. The last thing I'll say is about your equipment. A lot of paraglide pilots, they don't think about their reserve very often, but acro pilots, anytime I'm about to do acro, I check my reserves, make sure the handles are secured. The point is, keep your reserves in really top shape, keep your harness in top shape. Acro can put a lot of stress on your equipment, so make sure that your stuff is in top shape all the time, and that you've checked it, and that you know how to repack your reserve and everything's good. That will give you peace of mind, and if things hit the fan, that you'll make it to the ground safely. So I hope this helps you. If you need some reserve or a new harness or an acro glider, you let me know, airintheair@gmail.com. I'll hook you up. I give good discounts to my YouTube subscribers. My friend Max Emmer just ordered a Blackout Plus off of my YouTube channel. I gave him a great deal, shipped it out to New Jersey. He just got it. He's super stoked, so thanks for ordering with me, Max. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. I answer them all. Subscribe to my channel for more instructional content and more adventures. And thanks so much for being here. We will see you on the next episode.